Hello, class, and welcome to this week where we will be focusing on infancy and early childhood within the course, lifespan development. Before we dive in to this really captivating subject, I invite you to just take a moment and reflect on your own experiences with infants and young children. Whether it's your interactions with siblings or cousins or neighbors, or perhaps your own memories of being cared for as a child. These personal encounters offer valuable insights into the themes we'll be exploring today. And as we venture through this lecture, we'll unravel the mysteries surrounding the earliest stages of human life, from the miraculous process of prenatal development to the dynamic changes that unfold during infancy and early childhood. So together, these will give us some insight into the critical stages in these very formative years. Now, let's lay the foundation for our lecture for today with the three main themes. First off, we're going to have a story. We always want to have a story about some key figure in lifespan development, and then we'll focus on prenatal development, infancy, and early childhood. What is prenatal development? Well, that really encompasses that remarkable journey of growth and transformation that occurs before birth. From the moment of conception to the emergence of a fully formed infant. This period is characterized by rapid physiological and, importantly, neurological changes that set the stage for future development. And moving beyond the womb, infancy marks the initial stage of human life, typically spanning from birth to around 18 months to 2 years of age. And it's really an incredible time of incredible growth and discovery as infants begin to explore their surroundings, develop basic motor skills, and form crucial attachments. And finally, early childhood extends from the end of infancy to around the ages of 6 or 7. And this represents a period of significant cognitive, social, and emotional development. And during this time, children become increasingly independent. They become curious and capable of engaging with the world around them. Now, I want to start off with introducing you to one of the great figures in lifespan development, particularly in understanding development in infancy and early childhood, and that would be Jean Piaget. Born in 1896, he passed in 1980. And he was born in Switzerland. Piaget was a Swiss psychologist who pioneered work revolutionizing our whole comprehension of cognitive development in children. And Piaget's legacy in the field of developmental psychology really is profound, with his theories framing a understanding of how individuals progress from infancy all the way through to adolescence. And Piaget's early research focused on the development of intelligence in children, leading him to propose a groundbreaking theory of cognitive development. Now, central to Piaget's theory was the concept of a schema, or a mental framework that individuals use to organize and interpret information about the world. And Piaget suggested that children actively construct their understanding of the world through a series of stages, and each is characterized by distinct ways of thinking and of reasoning. And one of Piaget's most influential contributions was his theory of cognitive development, which outlined the 4 stages of intellectual growth. We start off with what we call the sensory motor stage, from birth through to 2 years years old, the pre-operational stage from 2 through to 7, the concrete operational stage from 7 through to 11, and the formal operational stage from 11 years and beyond. And this meticulous observation of experimentation, Piaget identified the key milestones and behaviors associated with each of these stages. And this shed light on the underlying processes driving cognitive development. And in essence, Piaget made it clear that the way that people think changes significantly throughout their early years of life. The childlike thinking is very different from adult thinking in many ways, in the way that they interact with the world and the way that they construct their internal schemas, and even the kinds of information that they really have access to be able to play with are limited in child. And so this is something that you need to keep in mind, particularly as we discuss early childhood, late childhood, and adolescence. Now, let's move on and explore just a little bit of prenatal development. Prenatal development really encompasses that remarkable process of growth and maturation that unfolds within the womb, laying the foundation for all future stages of life. And prenatal development typically spans approximately 40 weeks, divided into 3 main stages: the germinal stage, the embryonic stage, and the fetal stage. So let's talk about the germinal stage to begin with. And that is the initial stage which begins at conception, when the sperm fertilizes the egg, forming a zygote. And the zygote rapidly divides through mitosis as it travels down the fallopian tube towards the uterus. And around 7 to 10 days after fertilization, the zygote implants itself into the uterine lining, marking the end of this germinal stage. Then we have the embryonic stage, and this lasts approximately 2 to 8 weeks after conception. And the embryonic stage is a period of intense growth and development. And during this time, the embryo's major organs and bodily systems begin to form through a process known as organogenesis. And critical structures, such as the neural tube, which eventually develops into the brain and spinal cord, emerge during this stage. And finally, we have the fetal stage, and beginning around the 9th week of gestation, the continuation until birth is this fetal stage, which is characterized by further growth and refinement of the developing organs. And during this time, the fetus undergoes significant neurological, physiological, and behavioral changes, and organs continue to mature, and the fetus becomes increasingly responsive to external stimuli. And throughout prenatal development, the genetics play a fundamental role in shaping the course of development and growth. And genetic factors inherited from both parents influence the traits such as physical characteristics, temperament, and susceptibility to certain diseases. Now, I want to focus in on a little bit more with this prenatal development, particularly when we're talking about the neurological development, because this is a crucial time. So remember, the earliest stages of embryonic development to the final weeks before birth is a time when the nervous system undergoes a series of very intricate transformations that lay the groundwork for complex neurological processes. And so right at the outset of prenatal development, one of the earliest and most crucial milestones is the formation of the neural tube. And this process occurs during the embryonic stage, typically within the first few weeks after conception. And the neural tube serves as the precursor to the central nervous system, eventually giving rise to the brain and spinal cord. And any disruptions or abnormalities during this critical period can have profound consequences for neurological development. And as prenatal development progresses, the basic structure of the brain begins to take shape. By the end of the embryonic stage, rudimentary brain regions, including the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain, are very discernible. And over the subsequent weeks and months, these regions undergo further specialization and differentiation, laying the foundation for more complex neurological functions. And critical periods of development also play a key role in prenatal neurological development. And these are specific windows of time during which the developing brain is particularly sensitive to environmental influences and experiences. Exposure to positive stimuli, such as sensory stimulation and maternal bonding, can promote healthy neurological development during these critical periods. Conversely, exposure to harmful substances or stressors can disrupt normal brain development and increase the risk of neurological deficits. So something as simple as parents arguing prenatally can have an impact because the stress hormones, adrenaline, for example, can impact on normal brain development in the fetal stage or in the germinal stage or in any part of this process. And so through the fetal stage, the developing brain undergoes rapid growth and maturation, and neurons continue to proliferate. They migrate to their designated positions and establish connections with neighboring cells through a process known as synaptogenesis. And this proliferation of synaptic connections forms the basis for the whole complex neural networks that underlie cognitive and behavioral function of every human being. Fantastic. But there's something I need to highlight in this process. Something that's really crucial to address, and that is the potential impact of teratogens, which are substances or environmental factors that can interfere with normal fetal development and lead to congenital abnormalities or birth defects. Teratogens have the potential to disrupt that delicate process of neural development and bodily development within the embryo and the fetal growth. And so it's important to do what we can to minimize exposure to harmful substances during pregnancy. And teratogens can encompass a wide range of substances, and these not limited to, but include drugs and alcohol. Alcohol is absolutely horrible in the development of an embryo or fetus. It can do incredible amounts of damage. Tobacco, prescription medications, environmental toxins, and even infectious agents. Each of these teratogens poses unique risks to the developing fetus, and their effects can vary depending on factors such as dosage, timing of exposure, and individual susceptibility. And one of the most well-known teratogens is, of course, alcohol, which can cause a range of developmental abnormalities collectively known as fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Fetal exposure to alcohol can result in physical deficits, cognitive deficits, and behavioral deficits, including facial abnormalities, growth deficiencies, intellectual disabilities, and behavioral problems. Similarly, exposure to certain drugs, such as cocaine or heroin or methamphetamine, can have detrimental effects on fetal development as well. And these substances can impair placental function, restrict fetal blood flow, and disrupt normal neurological development, and lead to a host of adverse outcomes, including low birth weight, preterm birth, and developmental delays. And environmental toxins such as lead, mercury, or pesticides also pose significant risks to prenatal development. And exposure to these substances during pregnancy can interfere with fetal development and growth. They can lead to neurological deficits, cognitive impairments, and other health complications. And while the effects of teratogens on prenatal development can be devastating, it's important to recognize that many of these risks can be mitigated through proactive measures. Prenatal care, including regular medical checkups, screenings, and lifestyle counseling, plays a crucial role in identifying and minimizing exposure to teratogens. And additionally, educating expectant mothers about the potential risks of teratogens and promoting healthy lifestyle choices can help to safeguard the health and well-being of both mother and baby. And it's essential to consider the pioneering work of all researchers. But when we now speak of after birth in infancy, it's extremely important to be mindful of the work of Jean Piaget, whose theories have greatly influenced our understanding of cognitive development within children. And one of Piaget's seminal concepts is the sensory motor stage, which characterizes the earliest period of cognitive development, typically occurring from birth to around 2 years of age. Now, during the sensory motor stage, infants interact with the world primarily through their sensory perceptions and motor actions. Piaget identified several key features of this stage, each highlighting the progressive nature of cognitive development during infancy. So first off, we have reflexes. And at birth, infants possess a huge repertoire of reflexes that guide their interactions with the environment. And such reflexes such as sucking, grasping, and rooting serve vital functions in promoting survival and facilitating early interactions with caregivers. Then there's the idea of object permanence. And one of the most significant milestones of the sensory motor stage is the development of object permanence. That is, early in this stage, if a object is not within the sight of the child, then it simply doesn't exist. And so that's why with young children you can play that game where you hide the ball and then it appears again, and they're so excited and happy because you're like doing magic. And so it's the idea of understanding that the object continues to exist even when they no longer visibly see it that becomes a key stage. So initially, infants lack this concept, and they may exhibit behaviors such as searching for a hidden object only when it is in sight. However, as their cognitive abilities mature, infants gradually acquire a more sophisticated understanding of object permanence, enabling them to anticipate the presence of objects even when they are out of sight. Then there's the idea of goal-directed behavior. And as infants progress through the sensory motor stage, they begin to demonstrate increasingly purposeful and goal-directed behavior. They learn to coordinate their actions to achieve specific outcomes. They are such as reaching for a toy or manipulating objects to achieve a desired result. And this capacity of goal-directed behavior reflects the growing sophistication of their cognitive abilities and their expanding understanding of cause and effect relationships. And then finally, the symbolic representation. Towards the latter parts of the sensory motor stage, infants begin to exhibit rudimentary forms of symbolic representation, such as the use of gestures and vocalizations and simple words to communicate their needs. And this marks the transition to what we call the pre-operational stage. And this is characterized by the emergence of language and symbolic thought. So as you can see, the work of Piaget is hugely important here. So as we continue our exploration of this kind of stage, there are a few things that we need to kind of highlight within infancy. First off, motor development. During infancy, infants undergo significant advancements in their motor skills, progressing from those simple reflexes to more complex movements. And this key milestone includes things like lifting their head, rolling over, sitting unassisted, crawling, pulling to a stand, and then eventually walking. And these motor achievements reflect the maturation of the neuromuscular coordination and contribute to the infant's increasing independence and exploration of their environment. Then there's language development and language acquisition, which is another crucial milestone of infancy. So there's a lot going on here. And this is characterized by the emergence of communication skills and linguistic abilities. Infants begin to babble, producing repetitive sounds and syllables, before gradually developing the capacity to recognize and produce meaningful words. And by the end of the first year, many infants can understand simple commands, respond to their names, and engage in early forms of social communication. Then there's also social development. And infancy is a period of really burgeoning social development. It's marked by the formation of attachments with caregivers and the development of social bonds with peers. And infants really demonstrate a preference for familiar faces. They engage in reciprocal interactions with caregivers and exhibit social referencing. And the ability to interpret others' emotional expressions and to respond accordingly. And these early social experiences lay the foundation for later social competence and emotional regulation. Then there's cognitive development. And cognitive development during infancy is characterized by rapid advances in perceptual memory and problem-solving abilities. And here, infants engage in active exploration of the environment. We've already talked about that. But also the manipulation of objects and making some rudimentary causal connections. And they demonstrate here an increasing understanding of object permanence and the ideas of cause and effect relationships and symbolic representation. And this lays the foundation and paves the way to the higher levels of cognitive processes and later stages of development. Then there's the emotional development, and this unfolds alongside other domains during infancy. Now, within infants, They begin to express a wide range of emotions and develop some rudimentary self-regulation skills. And infants show preferences for familiar caregivers. They exhibit social smiles and laughter and display distress when separated from attachment figures. And through responsive caregiving and positive interactions, infants learn to regulate their emotions and develop secure attachments, which form the basis for healthy socio-emotional development. Now, something else that's really important is exploring the genetic foundations. They are the blueprints for every individual's cognitive abilities, their temperament, their predisposition, and guides their developmental outcomes. And genetic factors really contribute significantly to various aspects of mental development during infancy, including cognitive abilities, language acquisition, and socio-emotional functioning. So, if we look at twin and adoption studies, this has provided some compelling evidence for the heritability of cognitive traits and demonstrating the influence of genetic factors on intelligence and memory and attention and other cognitive processes. Moreover, advances in molecular genetics have identified specific genes and genetic variations associated with cognitive development and also intellectual disabilities. For example, mutations in genes involved in neuronal development, synaptogenesis, and neurotransmitter regulation have led to developmental disorders like the Fragile X syndrome, autism spectrum disorder, and things like Down syndrome. However, it's essential to recognize that genetic predispositions interact dynamically with environmental factors to shape mental development during infancy. So the concept of gene-environment interactions really highlights that intricate interplay between genetic vulnerabilities and environmental influences. So things like prenatal nutrition, parental caregiving, and early stimulation also play a huge role. And research has underscored the importance of enriched environmental and responsive caregiving in promoting optimal mental development during infancy. Positive parent-child interactions, including sensitive responsiveness, contingent communication, and secure attachment relationships, foster this cognitive language and socio-emotional growth within the child. Now, there is another key value that is going on during this stage that is also very important. Within the realm of early childhood development, the concept of basic trust versus mistrust holds significant importance. And it really lays the foundation for the child's socio-emotional well-being and future relationships. This is part of Erik Erikson's developmental schema, and it represents the first stage in psychosocial development. Basic trust versus mistrust typically occurs during infancy and early childhood, so that's spanning from birth to around 18 months or around 2 years. And at the core of this stage is the infant's developing sense of trust in the world and the people around them. When caregivers consistently meet the infant's needs for comfort and nourishment and security and affection, the infant develops a sense of trust and confidence in their environment. They learn to rely on others for support, develop a positive outlook on the world, and feel secure in their relationships. Conversely, if caregivers are inconsistent, neglect, or are unresponsive to the infant's needs, the infant may develop a sense of mistrust and insecurity. They may become apprehensive and anxious or withdrawn, and they may struggle to form trusting relationships in the future. And this lack of trust can have lasting implications for the child's socio-emotional development and interpersonal relationships. The establishment here of basic trust during early childhood is closely linked to the concept of attachment, which refers to the enduring emotional bond between an infant and their primary caregiver. Now, secure attachment, characterized by this responsive and sensitive caregiving, fosters a sense of trust and security in the child. And this means both mother and father, or the significant caregivers, being sensitive and responsive. And this lays the groundwork for healthy socio-emotional development. And Erickson believed that the successful resolution of basic trust versus mistrust sets the stage for the subsequent stages of psychosocial development. And so a strong foundation of trust provides the confidence and security necessary to navigate future challenges and to form meaningful relationships. Now, let's explore a little bit more about these early childhood. And that is with the idea of attachment. Attachment theory, which was something that was pioneered by a fellow by the name of John Bowlby and further developed by Mary Ainsworth, underscores the importance of secure attachments between infants and caregivers in promoting healthy development. Secure attachment is characterized by a strong emotional bond, characterized by trust and safety and comfort, which forms the foundation for healthy socio-emotional functioning. Now, responsive caregiving lies at the heart of fostering these secure attachment relationships. When caregivers consistently meet the infant's physical and emotional needs, they respond promptly to distress signals and provide a secure base from which the child can explore their environment. They cultivate a sense of trust and security in the child. And this secure base allows the child to develop autonomy, self-confidence, and resilience, laying the foundation for healthy socio-emotional development. And furthermore, caregivers play a critical role in supporting the cognitive development of the child through enriching interactions and stimulating environments, and through language-rich interactions, play-based learning activities, and exposure to new experiences. And caregivers promote language acquisition, cognitive skills, and problem-solving abilities in young children. And so by fostering a supportive and intellectually stimulating environment, caregivers nurture the curiosity, the creativity, and the intellectual growth of the child. And so, in essence, caregivers serve as role models for social and emotional development. They teach children important skills such as empathy and cooperation and emotional regulation through their own behavior and actions, and they demonstrate warmth and empathy and positive communication so that the child learns healthy social relationships and provides the child with valuable social and emotional tools that they can carry forward into their interactions with others. That is the intent, at least. Now, we're going to explore a little bit of early childhood relationships and their impact upon emotional health. Early caregiving experiences in particular here play a critical role in shaping the way that individuals perceive themselves and others, how they regulate their emotions and form relationships with others. One of those things we've already talked about, attachment theory, emphasizes the importance of early caregiver-child relationships. And here, this really highlights the quality of these relationships can impact later social and emotional functioning. Secure attachments, characterized by responsive and nurturing caregiving, provide children with a sense of trust and safety and security in their relationships. And these early experiences lay the foundation for healthy emotional regulation and self-esteem and the ability to form secure attachments with others in their life. Now, conversely, insecure attachments, such as anxious or avoidant attachment patterns, can result in inconsistent or neglectful or abusive caregiving experiences. And children who experience insecure attachments may struggle with emotional regulation, have difficulty forming trusting relationships, and may exhibit maladaptive coping strategies in response to stressors. Furthermore, the quality of early caregiving experiences can influence individuals' interpersonal skills and their social competence in later life. And children who receive warm and supportive and emotionally responsive caregiving tend to develop strong social skills and empathy and the ability to form positive relationships with others. In contrast, children who experience harsh and unresponsive or inconsistent caregiving may struggle with social interactions and exhibit aggressive or withdrawn behavior and have difficulty establishing and maintaining relationships. And research suggests that the effects of early caregiving experiences on social and emotional functioning extend into adolescence and adulthood. And individuals who have experienced secure attachments and positive caregiving in early life are more likely to exhibit resilience and emotional well-being and satisfying relationships in adulthood. Conversely, individuals who have experienced insecure attachments or adverse caregiving experiences may be at increased risk of mental health issues, relationship difficulties, and maladaptive coping strategies later in life. Now, I want to explore just a little bit of early childhood because this is a real critical period of rapid growth and development. And it's here when children acquire some real fundamental skills and abilities to form the foundation for future learning and success. However, some children may experience delays or disorders in their development, which can have significant implications for their long-term outcomes. And so early identification of developmental delays or disorders is really crucial for providing timely intervention and support to optimize a child's developmental trajectories. Now, one of the first things is timely intervention. And early identification really allows for some prompt intervention and support that's really tailored to the individual's needs. And research has shown that early intervention services such as speech therapy or occupational therapy or behavioral interventions can be highly effective in addressing developmental delays or improving outcomes. And by identifying concerns early, children can access the support they need to reach their full potential and overcome challenges more effectively. And this also means preventing secondary complications. So Untreated developmental delays or disorders can sometimes lead to secondary complications such as academic difficulties or social isolation and emotional problems. And early identification enables professionals to address the underlying issues before they escalate, reducing the risk of long-term negative consequences and improving overall well-being. And this maximizes the developmental potential because early intervention programs focus on maximizing the child's developmental potential by targeting areas of difficulty and providing targeted support. And by addressing developmental delays early, interventions can capitalize on the brain's plasticity and capacity for change. It can enhance the children's abilities and increasing their likelihood of success in school and beyond. And of course, there should be some supporting of the families because early identification also benefits families by providing them with the information and the resources and the support to navigate their child's developmental needs. Kids don't come with a manual, but the information is out there now. Early interventions and professional work, working collaboratively with families to develop individualized intervention plans and educating parents on what will help their child and connect them with the community resources and the social networks that the parents need can really empower the whole family to play an active role in the child's development. And early identification really promotes family resilience and enhances the outcomes for children. And this has a huge benefit in society overall. It reduces the long-term costs because early intervention and identification have shown to have a cost saving over the long term by reducing the need for more intensive and costly interventions later in life. And by addressing developmental delays early, interventions can help children achieve better outcomes and reduce the need for special education services, mental health interventions, and other supports in the future. So, as we come to the close of this particular session, I want to highlight a few key terms. First off, teratogens. What are teratogens? Those are substances or environmental factors that can interfere with normal fetal development and lead to congenital abnormalities or birth defects. Teratogens are bad. Then there's object permanence. What is that? That's the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they're out of sight, which typically develops during the sensory motor stage of cognitive development. Then there's secure attachment. What is that? That is that strong emotional bond between an infant and their primary caregiver, characterized by trust and safety and comfort, which forms the foundation for healthy socio-emotional development. Then there is developmental delays. What's a developmental delay? Well, that is delays in achieving the developmental milestones in one or more areas of development, whether that be physical or cognitive or language or social or emotional domain. And I always like to include a little question here. So, what is object permanence? Well, it's understanding that objects continue to exist even when they are out of sight. And remember, that happens and develops in that sensory motor stage of cognitive development outlined by Jean Piaget. And so, for some closing thoughts, as we've explored prenatal development and infancy and early childhood, It's really evident, I think, that these formative stages play a critical role in shaping the trajectory of an individual's development. There's a real miracle that happens in that prenatal growth and the dynamic transformations that happen in infancy and early childhood. And each stage is marked by these remarkable milestones, but also some challenges and some opportunities for growth. We've looked a little bit at the intricacies of prenatal development, the importance of genetics, the dangers of teratogens, the neurological processes in shaping developmental stages of the fetus. We've explored the sensory motor stage. We've explored the importance of developing trust versus mistrust. We've explored key milestones such as object permanence and symbolic representation. And we've explored why it's so important to identify developmental delays or disorders, and underscoring the need for timely interventions and support to optimize the child's developmental outcomes, and how important it is for communities to empower families, to equip parents, to support the child's growth and well-being, and ultimately pave a way to a brighter future for that child and for society at large. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I will see you next time as we continue our exploration of lifespan development. You take care. Goodbye.